we are back with another episode, of course looking at case law. And today, guys, I'm very excited because we are looking at our first criminal law case on this podcast. It's a gigantic achievement, guys. Like a criminal matter. We finally succumbed to the idea of course, talking about criminal cases. So today's criminal case, in full citation, is Fredrick M.Kunda versus the People, Appeal number 37 of 2020. So when we get back, we will dive right into this matter, which commences from the Subordinate Court or the Magistrate Court of Zambia. So some Ben sound, then tuzabwela baki. Okay, welcome back. So, the case of Fredrick M.Kunda versus the People started out in the Magistrate Court of the Republic of Zambia. Now, it is alleged by the prosecution in this matter that Mr. Fredrick M.Kunda defiled his 7-year-old cousin in Mufulira district on the Copper Belt, province of the Republic of Zambia. The brief and summarized facts are: the mother to the 7-year-old tender child had left home to go fetch water. It is alleged that it was during this period that Mr. Fredrick M.Kunda decided to take the child into his house and performed the unacceptable and unlawful act of defilement to this 7-year-old child, and afterwards threatened her to say if she said anything, he would beat her up. But the child did not succumb to the pressure, and when the mother came back, she informed him of this. The child went through a medical examination and it confirmed that the child was defiled. A matter was brought against Mr. Kunda for defilement in this instant case, and upon evaluating all the evidence, the magistrate, that's what you call the judges in the magistrate court, the magistrate was satisfied with the evidence, stating that the medical examination had confirmed that the child was defiled, also that the identification of the offender was something that was not in question. This is because they were cousins and they were easily identifiable. Now, because of the criminal procedural laws that have been enacted in our country, which is the Criminal Procedure Code, Chapter 88 of the Laws of Zambia, magistrate courts have a limit with their sentence. So in this effect, the sentence relating to defilement is of, the minimum sentence is higher. I think it's 15, somewhere 15 is the minimum sentence. So it is beyond their scope as magistrates. So the matter had to be sent to the Supreme Court for sentencing. The hearing and the passing of judgment, magistrate. But the sentencing was sent to the High Court of Zambia. So in the High Court of Zambia, in the People versus Fredrick M.Kunda, the High Court sentenced Mr. Kunda, to 25 years imprisonment with hard labor. Now, Mr. Kunda, dissatisfied with, of course, the judgment given and the conviction, he decided to make an appeal to the Supreme Court of Zambia. And his appeal was heard as the 37th appeal of 2020, hence appeal number 37 of 2020. So, on appeal to the Supreme Court of the Republic of Zambia, Fredrick M. Kunda raised two grounds. Firstly, he said the magistrate court erred in law and in fact because there was no corroborative evidence in this instance to support their allegation of defilement. The other was that the magistrate erred in law and in fact in receiving evidence after a defective voire. Now, I'll explain all this in this episode. If what I explained in this episode is not enough, I will make another episode. So, the Supreme Court, having looked at all the evidence, because the Supreme Court is a court of appeal, they don't rehear the matter. They hear the matter based on the evidence submitted with the record of appeal and also the submissions that are given to support your arguments. So they looked at all the evidence from the court below, and their judgment was that magistrate erred when he decided to apply the now repealed provision of Section 122 of the Juveniles Act of the Laws of Zambia. Now, this Section 122 talks about how we treat children as witnesses in any matter. What are the procedures that are required? Now, the magistrate decided to ask the child whether they understood the nature of an oath. And having been satisfied with the answer, the judge said the child possesses sufficient intelligence and also understands the duty of speaking the truth. And as such, the child was a competent witness. But the court, or the highest court of appeal in our country, said this was wrong because that provision had been replaced due to events. So meaning basically the Juveniles Act was amended, and the new amendment requires that the trial judge determines whether a child is adequately competent of giving evidence by asking if they possess sufficient intelligence and they understand the duty of speaking the truth. If they don't understand the duty of speaking the truth, they cannot therefore be allowed as competent witnesses. And furthermore, when it comes to issues of Section 122 Juveniles Act, and if you have a child witness, their evidence must be corroborated by any other material fact to support that allegation. If those two are not there, you can't convict. So in this instance, it was all about the issue of voire. So the court, having found that, asked themselves another question. They said, is there any other evidence here to point to the fact that Mr. Fredrick M.Kunda is indeed guilty of defilement? So the courts, having looked at the evidence, stated that there was nothing else, and as a result, they acquitted Mr. Fredrick M.Kunda. The court also went on to state that the burden of proof is always on the prosecution. In a nutshell, they were saying, he who alleges comes to court with those allegations, and it is his duty to satisfy that criminal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And if that doubt is not removed, the court has no duty but to rule in favor of the accused, because there's more than one inference. So it has to be clear. So in that end, Mr. Fredrick M.Kunda was acquitted and he was set free to be at liberty, and the matter was overturned. So when we get back, we will be looking at the gist of what this actually means, and also trying to understand why this is an important case. So for now, let's listen to some bend sound. Okay, welcome back. So, let's get into the case and what this means. First and foremost, whenever a child is considered to be a witness, it is not automatic that there will be a witness. No. A child generally is not a compatible and a compellable witness under the laws of evidence, because the fear is they do not understand speaking the truth and that the child can easily be swayed. So there is a procedure that allows us to determine whether a child understands and possesses that sufficient intelligence to be a witness in a criminal or a civil matter. This is what is known as voire or voire. In America, voire is the choosing of the jury. I'm sure you've watched legal movies where they say we want to have a jury. But in our country, it relates to the questioning of the court of a child to determine whether they are competent and compellable to be a witness. So that's the first stage. 2, what this case brings about is the fact that the magistrate and the High Court always have to follow the laws that are currently enacted in our country. And when it comes to criminal procedural code, in order for a conviction to be undertaken, the law must at all times be followed. So in a nutshell, using my jurisprudence, we could argue to say, in cases such as Fredrick Kunda versus the people, the ideology that the only principle that criminal law serves is justice. We can see that law and justice in this aspect are two separate entities, that the law is focused on procedure when it comes to criminal prosecution, that procedure is a cardinal aspect. If the prosecution or the judges or the magistrates mess up, the criminal, even though he is accused and there is sufficient evidence, even though that person has been accused, but if they fail to adhere to the correct procedures set down, that judgment or that conviction can easily be set aside. Now, due to time, I'll have to make another episode to talk about why the court actually overturned this provision that the magistrate actually cited. So this will be a two-part series. So the next episode will just dive straight into why the court overturned this ruling, which is very sad because, issues of defilement are on the rise in our country, very rampant, and it's very sad. But at the end of the day, the court will always tell you rules of the court ought to be followed, and that the parties that don't do so at their own peril, or the fact that the magistrate also has to understand, or the judges and everyone understands, that they obtain their powers from the laws. Even in the Subordinate Court Act, you find a provision that states that the rules and practices of the magistrate are as provided for in that particular act or any other written law. So meaning the judges and everyone else, the magistrates, are stuck to the laws and they must adhere to them. So they can't make anything without the laws that give them that power. That is the jurisdiction. So that is why to some end I was saying, to some end in criminal procedural law, justice and the law are two separate entities. There's a thin line because the law is only concerned with laying down a procedure and ensuring it is adhered to. So meaning the fair trial for the accused as well. So in a nutshell, it's very saddening that the Supreme Court had to vacate the decision of the magistrate, but to cite repealed law and then you are being told actually you cited the wrong law, it's no longer applicable law, it's very puzzling. But anyway, hope you've learned a few things despite the fact that they had to reverse the judgment. And this is why I don't like talking about criminal law cases, because they're a bit controversial in my view. But anyway, I basically wanted to tell you how criminal proceedings work when it comes to the evidence of a child. And yes, so that is for today's episode. So the next episode will be a follow-up, us now basically talking about why the Supreme Court basically overturned this ruling in detail. So you've been listening to George Chintanko Malepela on. Thank you very much for joining me, and see you for part 2 of Fredrick M.Kunda versus the People. I am signing out and saying bye.